So this is a video for data on rescuing animals, which we're going to do a little bit more thoroughly. We're just going to revise a lot of what we've seen so far. So it'll be a little bit slower maybe than some of the others. But we will also answer the questions that we gave you. So we're starting with a CSV file. Okay, I have a CSV file that happens to be on my desktop. CSV file is a comma separated values file. What does that mean? If we open it with a text editor, something really simple, we can see that there's a load of stuff, but essentially it's something followed by a comma, followed by something, followed by a comma, followed by something, and so on. And so that represents the columns, and then all of these values, which are the rows, will fall into place so that you get, so for example, incident number, date, time of call, calendar year. If we have this data and we open it by right-clicking on the file in the drive, open with Google Sheets, we see that the items in the CSV file have been separated out into each column. Great. You might not have the file in a drive. You might be working from scratch, and you might just make a new Google Sheets. And you might create that probably in your own drive. And then you might go to Import under File. And when you click on Import, you can upload it. You can also look in the drive, look for a file that's been shared with you, but upload and find it is usually how I import these. And then you have the data. So that's CSVs and importing them. Let's not bother with the second one. Okay, so here is our data. So the first thing we're going to do is organize it a little bit. We are going to right-click on this tab down here and duplicate it. Then we're going to double-click on these tabs so we can rename them. I'm going to call that D for data, and double-click here and call it original. It's got a name, but maybe I'll rename it and call it Animal Rescue Video. Okay, and then in the file I'm going to work with, which is the one I've labeled D, I am going to go to View, Freeze, one row, so that we have these. We can use all the usual shortcuts. I can select that row and go Command B to make it bold. And that, I think, is everything for organizing. Now we can delete cells. We might find that financial year, for example, particularly because we've made a copy, we can delete stuff and then go back to it if we really need to check something. So if we right-click on this, we can delete it. You might choose for this, for example, to right-click again, but just to hide it. So you can hide the column so it disappears, but it's still there, so you go from C to E. Now we can, I'm going to remove that actually. I'm going to unhide that column, unhide column, and I'm actually going to delete it. Delete column altogether. Now this has 5,000 rows. You do not want to be scrolling around with this. So you need, on a Mac, you need Command down arrow, and that will get you to the bottom. Command up arrow will get you to the top. Command right will get you all the way over here. Command left. And then crucially, if you need to select, so we need to select, for example, well, how many, I don't know, say there's a number here and you want to add them all up. Quickest way then will be to Command down arrow, but with Shift. And that selects them all, which then lets you do things. For example, look at the calculator on the right. So there's our calculator, tells us how many there are. Gives us the average, the sum, and the biggest number, and so on. So that's how we move around. We can look things up with Control F. We can say, I want to find the row that mentions a sheep. There we go. And so there are 3 references, so we can just move through them. That's the first reference, second reference, and there's a third reference because there's a place called Sheep House. There are more options. You can match case. You can also search in a particular column rather than the whole thing. So Control F works, and then the important things are filtering. So we want to know, so this column here called incident notional cost basically has the cost of the individual rescue. So if it's £352 for an hour and it takes them 2 hours, they get 704. So we can sort these columns just by going up to where the letters are, and there's a drop down arrow, and if we click on that, we can sort. Well, if it's alphabetical, it's very easy, A to Z or Z to A. If it's numbers, big numbers to small is Z to A. So we've got a whole lot of null, and after that we have 3276. So there was a rescue that cost, in theory, it's a notional cost, 3,276. This is where you might want to jump down, command down arrow, and see what the least is. There was one that cost nothing. So that is sorting. We might want to filter. We might want to filter for calendar year probably. So we go to data, create a filter, and say I only want to see 2025, for example. And now we only have 2025. What else do we need to do? We might want to filter by condition. So in 2025, I might want to filter the descriptions, these final descriptions of what exactly happened. By condition, I might want to look for the text contains pigeon. And I have to find the OK button. There it is. And so now I have only those rows that mention a pigeon after filtering here. Of course, I've already filtered in 2025, so these are all the references to pigeons in 2025. And then the last thing, for the moment, we'll remove that filter. Go to Data, Remove Filter. And then if I wanted to know, for example, how many hours, right? So we've got hours from row 34 down to 4673. I'm going to write a formula just to demonstrate what a formula looks like. It needs equals. Here we're going to do a sum, and we're going to go from E. Actually, we could probably go from E2. It'll just ignore the null values to E4673. There we go. So that is the total number of hours spent rescuing animals. We might not want to add them up. We might want to find the average. There's a lot of them I think are 1 hour. So what is the average number of hours? It is 1.15 hours on average. Okay, what about the median? We could use a different formula with the same range, equals median, and we see the median is 1. Okay, so those are formulas, and there's gazillions of them, and you can look them up to find the one that does exactly what you need to do. Other things that we have seen, we are going to use here. So we might want to insert a column. So if you select your column and right click, you can insert one column to the right. And what I would like to do is, this is an unholy mess, this column here, but I'm not going to worry about that because all I want for now is the timestamp. And the time is separated from everything else by a space. So if I select this column, it's important to have an empty column on the right because otherwise it will split the text over an existing column, which we don't want. So we can go to Data, Split Text to Columns, or split text to several columns, I suppose, and then tell it how you want it to split. you could, for example, split on the forward slash if you were trying to divide up this element, but we're going to split on a space. So you can choose that, or you can choose custom if what you want to extract by is not there. So there's a space, and it has pulled out all these times. Now I would like to split it again. Maybe it would help if we made it into time. There we go. So now they all look the same. That's better. And I'm going to call this time, and we will put in another column on the right. And this time we can split using the colon, which is not there. So we'd use custom. We put in a colon. Oops, I think I may have deleted something. Pump count. Have I? Yes, I have. Nope, I deleted those. So that looks okay. So what's happened here? We have hour and minutes. And this seems to just be rubbish left over. Okay, so we can get rid of that. So that's an example of splitting text to columns. Now, we might want to manage text. So this is wrapping. So you can see here that there's a lot of text in some of these, and it gets clipped. Now, you might prefer, depending on what you have, you go to Format, Wrapping. You can have Overflow, in which case it'll run on. It can't run on because there's another column. What could we do? We can, at the moment it's clipped, we could wrap it. And so now you see it shows you, it wraps all the text around and widens the rows so you can see it all. So that's good if you want to be able to read it. It's not so good if you like a neat, spreadsheet. So let's go back to Format, Wrapping, and let's clip. And so that way it just shortens it. It's still there, but it doesn't let it run on. And the other thing you can do with it is, if you don't have a column on the right, you should be able to go Wrapping, Overflow, and it'll run it over the column, and you can read it to the right. But we'll get rid of that. So that's wrapping. And then finally, we have pivot tables. So what does a pivot table allow us to do? It lets us aggregate or stick together oh, we've lost the year. That's what we lost, is it? Incident number, date, time. Yes, we lost all these years. That's unfortunate. Okay, well, we'll just duplicate this. Now I've got a clean copy of it again. So a very simple example is, can I see all these things added up by year? Now we have all the information, but we don't have things organized by year. So we insert a pivot table and we say, I want the rows to be calendar year. So there we go. We now have a table that has a row for 2022, a row for 2023, and so on. It loves making totals. And then the question is, well, what is it you want me to count? We could count, for example, the number of things, or we could count the cost. So incident notional cost, we could see how much it costs. And because it's got lots of numbers for 2022, it's going to add them up. So there you go. That's what it costs each year. What is available to us when we use a pivot table? We could choose not to add up all the 2022 rows with the with this cost, but count them instead. So every time you see a 2022, instead of just adding on the value, you just count. So that we can see there's 1,029 rows for 2022. We could put in a filter, and we could say I don't want to see 2025, for example. And 2025 has disappeared. Or you could say, I don't want to see cats. And the numbers will get adjusted accordingly. So those are filters and values. We might put in columns, which makes things a little bit more complicated, but sometimes can be useful. Let's say we want origin of call, right? We want to see how these rescues were divided. I think it's phones. Yeah. So now, and if I want to hide this, I can just click X. There's a pencil here, which lets me reopen the pivot table if I have to make adjustments. And so now, oh, there's too many totals. Go away with the totals. So now I can see that in 2022, there were this many, but they're divided now into these categories by column. So you have 363 from people on mobiles, 99 from people on landlines, none from the police, and then these odd ones. So that can be useful, but it can also get quite complicated. So let's not have some columns. Remember, if it gets to be too complicated, just throw everything out by clicking X, bye, and just drop them in again, calendar year for rows. And we can have incident number. Now I just want to count things, so it doesn't really matter what we put in because it's just going to count each row that it finds. So there we go. There's the number of incidents 2022, number of rows 2023, and so on. If we have a, let's make a long list with the animals. We put the animals into the rows, and then we will put the cost into the values. And so we have a number for all these animals, and here this is where we will want to sort not alphabetically by the animals, but by the sums, by the numbers. And that organizes things by the numbers, and we can choose to have it descending rather than ascending. We can also ask for, instead of having the values, we can ask for a percentage. So we can see that cats here have this great big number, but instead of giving us the absolute number, could you break the whole column down by percentages? And we can see 60% for cats, 17% for birds, and so that gives us a percentage breakdown, which can be useful. And that is it for pivot tables. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's have a look at the questions. What was the most expensive rescue? Okay, so I'm going to go back to a clean data set. I'm going to freeze the first row, and I'm going to delete those and this, and we might delete all the geographical stuff, which we'll use on it in a few weeks probably. Okay, so question 1, the most expensive rescue, the incident notional cost, not notational, notional. Oops. Okay, the most expensive rescue, that's very simple. We just need to go to this column, incident notional cost, and we need to sort them from big to small. And so we got a whole load that have no values, and then we see it's 3276. Yes, we saw that, didn't we? It was a dog as part of a water rescue. So you just need to sort that. Total cost of rescuing dogs in Camden in 2024. Okay, you could, if you were in a pivot table, you could probably get that out, but it's just a lot of filters, I think. So dogs, Camden 2024. You go to data, create a filter, calendar year 2024. Whoops. Then we need borough, is it? We need to go to Camden. Oops. There we go. There's Camden. And then we need to filter by animal. Okay, so that's it. There we go. There's just 6 of them. And there's the cost. And if we select those, we see the sum is 2454. So that's the total cost of rescuing dogs in Camden. Busiest year in terms of the number of rescues and the quietest. This is what we've just seen in the pivot table. I'm going to remove the filter. And you don't want to select things before you ask for your pivot table because it'll think you just are concerned with those. So as long as you clicked somewhere in the data, that should be enough. Insert pivot table. And this is what we just did. We want the calendar year to be the rows. And then we want something. Let's have the animals. It doesn't really matter because we're only counting. So the busiest year was 2024. The quietest year was 2022 in terms of the number of rescues. Busiest year if we exclude cats and dogs. Okay, so we'll just put a filter into our pivot table and say take out cats, the 2 spellings of cats and dogs. Now what happens? Busiest year was last year, 2024, if you don't count the cats and dogs. 2025 is incomplete. Make a rough adjustment to the 2025 figures to see if it looks like the busiest year for number of animals rescued. Okay, the problem here is that 2025 ends in September. So we have only got 9 months of the year in this data. So we have got 3 quarters. So really all we need to do is let's get rid of the filter and go back to, there we go. So we have got 9 months and we need 12. So what I'm going to do is say, well, equals, take this figure, divided by 9, and then take all of that. So the idea is that tells us on average how much is coming in, go away, how much is coming in a month, right? And we have 9 months here. That gives us 1 month. Actually, we'd like 12. So that will give us 12 months. Okay, 1498. Again, we skipped this. Decimal points. If you get all these decimal points, you can adjust them here because it's basically illegible. Good idea not to have decimal points here because you can't really have half a rescue. Okay, so 1499. Now, what that means is if the rest of this year continues exactly like it's been up to now, we're going to have a lot of rescues. We're going to have more than any other year. So while 2025 doesn't have as many rescues as 2024, that's only because we've only had 9 months out of the 12. And it looks like, unless there was some absolute collapse in the numbers of rescues, it looks like we're on course to have a busier year. So that's how to do that. What hour in the day gets the most calls? Okay, we have got, I'm going to delete this pivot table. Okay, we have got this thing here, date time of call. You can see it's a shambles. Now, why is that? It's because it thinks it's dates. It is dates, date times. But I think it's behaving like an American. So when it sees, it's reading this as 417. So it's got its days and its months backwards. So actually what we need to do here is tell the file, you don't have to do this, but it'll just show you what's happening. Tell it that you're in the United States, and then it turns into a bit of a shambles, but then tell it the format is a number for date time, and then it will line them up. Right, so if you're in the United States, it understands. I don't know why the dates are entered in an American yeah, so really we would expect to see 15/7. Okay, so what we're interested in is hours, right? What was the question? What hour of the day gets the most calls? So let's make right click some empty columns to the right. I'm going to put a few in because I don't want the thing splitting and covering up the calendar year, for example. So we'll select this and we will say data split text to columns, split it by the space first of all. And so that's the date, that's the time. And we will then split it again. But this time we will use colon. There we go. And so this is the hour. These are the minutes. And I don't know what that is. So we'll delete it. Okay. So if we were to sort this column, hour, from A to Z. Oh, nice. Well, that's not very good. No, that's not the thing to do. The thing to do is go to data, create a filter. And as often happens, that lets you look inside the figures and you can see it goes from 0 all the way up to 23, which is what we'd expect. So then we just need to make a pivot table and say I would like the hour to be my rows and I would like to take anything into values because we can only count them. And we'll adjust it so that it's sorted count. There we go. And it's going from the small numbers to the big numbers. Let's make it descending. So there we go. 314 of these rows come in hour 18. So 6 o'clock seems to be the time of the day when you get the most calls. What kind of animals have only been rescued once? Okay, I think we can do that just by putting the animals into the rows and then we'll put them into the values. We will sort the thing by the count. And actually here it's quite useful to have it going small to big. And here there is one instance for a budgie, for a fish, for a goat, a pigeon, a sheep, and a tortoise, and an unknown heavy livestock animal. Okay, those are the animals that have only been rescued once. What was the busiest borough for number of rescues? Well, that's the same kind of question. Just put the boroughs into the rows. You could even put boroughs into the values because again, it can't add them up. So there's not much it can do other than just count them. Sort by count of borough, please. And order by descending. So there we go. Southwark, Enfield, Tower Hamlets. 3 busiest over the 4 years. What other animals are in the top 10 for most frequently rescued? Well, we were just in the middle of that. That's not very well organized as questions go. Animals into rows. Animals into values. Count descending. Top 10. Okay. So we leave out the cats. Top 10. How many is 10? There we go, up to rabbit. So rabbit, squirrel, horse, deer, and fox. What percentage of landline calls in 2024 concern cats? Okay, how are we going to do this? What percentage of landline calls? Oh, I know what we'll do. We will put the call, it's called origin of call, into the rows. We could probably do it with columns as well, but I think we'll do it like this. We will put the animals in as the values, and then we will filter the animals. And you can see that, for example, landline has 663. This is for all years combined. And we can then simply filter, get rid of everything, and take cats. And you can see 330 landline calls about cats, 2,400 mobiles. Now, we wanted the percentage, wasn't it? What percentage of landline calls in 2024 concerned cats? No, that's not going to work. We're going to need... we are going to need columns. What if we... Let's see. Oh, right. What if we do the other way around? What if we put... what if we filter by origin of call? And we put the animals in, again, as the rows. And then we count something. Okay. And now we say... These are just landlines. Oh, hang on, get rid of the police as well. Okay, so here are all the animals that were... Do we have any other issues? That's 2024. Okay, so let's filter for year. Calendar year. So now what are we looking at? Now we are looking at the numbers of animals rescued by type of animal, only for 2024, and only for landlines. So now we need to ask not to see it with absolute numbers, but see, which we change here under values, but to see the percentage of the column. Okay, so they all add up to 100, and you can see that of all these animals which were flagged up by landline in 2024, 53% were cats, were about cats. Okay, so that's the percentage of landline calls in 2024 that concern cats. 53% of landline calls in 2024 concerned cats. Now, how has the percentage of landline calls evolved since 2022? Okay, so now we'll get rid of all of this because it's just going to get too complicated. This is probably how we were supposed to do it originally. Let's have origin of call in the rows. Let's have something to count in the values. And let's have the years, calendar year, in the columns. Let's get rid of the totals. And you can make this, can we? No. Okay, so here we have the number of animals each year broken down by origin of the phone call. So did people phone up on landlines or did they phone up on mobiles? We're interested in landline calls. So we could filter this, but we can just read it here, right? This is what we're interested in. Now we can see the absolute numbers seem to be dropping. So there are fewer and fewer landline calls. But as a percentage, how has it evolved? So we'll click on the pencil, go back in, and then we will ask to see, let's go to values and say, can we see it as a percentage of the column? Now this is where the totals are actually useful. I'll put them back in. Oh, they haven't appeared. Because we can see, I don't want row totals. No, we do want row totals. We don't want column totals. Okay, so now we can see if what we think is happening is actually happening. So these are, this is a breakdown in 2022. 0.1% came in by whatever that is. 18% came in over landlines. 81% came in on mobiles, and then these small ones, and that's everything in 2022 adds up to 100%. So now we can see the share of calls that are coming from landlines each year, and it's 18.5% in 2022, then 15% in 2023, then 12% of the calls in 2024, and then 11% of the calls in 2025. Now, could we have answered... that's the evolution since 2022. Now, which needed more rescuing? Horses in 2022, or deer in 2023, or squirrels in 2024? So all that needs is click on the pencil, and we'll get rid of everything. We just need to put the animals in as the rows, and then something for them to count. And then we need to break it down by year by putting year into columns. Get rid of the totals again. And so now you can see each animal by year. So the question was horses in 2022, 13, or deer in 2023 is 23, or squirrels in 2024, was it? Yeah, squirrels, there were only 10. Okay, so it's the second one, deer in 2023. Which animal tends to get stuck in washing machines? What's the exception? Okay, the answer here is going to be in this. And I think all we need to do is filter by condition for a text that contains washing. Yeah, I think. Washing machine, yeah, there we go. So you can see there are 15 animals which have a description involving a washing machine, and they're all cats. And then the end of the question is, what's the exception? And the exception is a bird. One bird managed to get stuck in a washing machine. Okay, what's the most expensive postcode district for rescues in 2024? Let's remove this filter. This is a pivot table problem. Click on the pencil to edit it. And let's just have postcodes, postcode district into the rows. And then let's have the cost, which is the incident notional cost, goes in as values. And then the usual thing where you, not that one, you sort by the value, descending. Oh, that's a count. We need a sum. There we go. And I'd like some commas, so I'm going to go to format number. Yeah, and then remove the decimal points. Okay, so now we can see it's 51,000 total costs for this place. Most expensive postcode district for rescues in 2024. That's fine, except we need to filter for 2024. So we get rid of these, and we see it's this postcode, CR0, followed by these E17. And now, finally, how many cases involved an animal trapped behind something? Make a new column and use this formula, the formula below, to search the final description column. Okay, so if we go to the column with the final description, we put in a column on the right, and then we use this formula, equals is number search. Okay, let's just copy all of it. Now, the text we're looking for is, it won't like those quote marks if you copy and paste them. We are looking for trapped behind. And the cell we're looking for is this one. It says true. That's probably okay to say. And then we'll call it text contains trapped behind, question mark. Yep. That's unhelpful. I started down there, which I didn't mean to do. Okay, so now that we have true and false, which is what this returns, it returns true if it finds the phrase trapped behind. Then we can simply put in a filter and say, show me all the ones where it says true. And these are all the descriptions involving trapped behind, and we can just select them all, and it's 212. And there we go. Done.